Welcome, critters. I'm Clara Jones, your devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we discuss and examine Critical Role episodes, plot lines, characters, and players through the lens of sacred reading practices. Today, we are talking about Campaign 1, Episode 21, Part 1. And joining me today is Atlas. Woohoo!
Hello.
All right, so the icebreaker for today is, what song makes you feel better?
I don't have a specific song. I just have a playlist titled Good Vibes,
Yeah.
and I put it on shuffle.
Nice.
And it's all got kind of the same like driving beat. It's not like your typical upbeat pop music. It's just got a rhythm to it that I don't know, makes me want to do things. So I couldn't name a song if I had to, but I have a playlist for it.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of need one of those myself. There's actually one that I use called Spiritual, but it bangs.
Nice.
It's not my own playlist. I cannot claim credit for it, but the one song that I think that always puts me in a good mood, no matter what kind of energy I'm in, is actually a WAP cover. That's a black metal cover.
Nice.
And like just the combination of those two things together never fails to bring a smile to my face.
There are so many things that are better as metal covers. Like, it is ridiculous how much you could take a bad song and make it good by making it metal.
Yeah, the band's called Leo, and so I was listening to their radio station for a little bit the other day, and apparently they also have a cover of, like a metal cover of Toss a Coin to Your Witcher.
Nice. Yeah, I was listening to one of my playlists the other day that has a metal cover of Hellfire from Hunchback of Notre Dame on it, which is
Oh,
amazing as a metal song.
oh my God, you're gonna have to send that to me
I'll
because
find
I
it
kind of
again.
need that in my life. Like, that is one of the most epic Disney scenes ever.
Mm.
Like, chills, epic.
Agreed. It's good in the first place, and then it got better.
Yeah. All right, well, please join us as we embark on this adventure in story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. As always, we love hearing from you, so please share your own insights and stories with us. Comment, like, subscribe, and ready? All right, let's dive in. Vox Machina have been split into two groups as part of a double contract offered by the Slayer's Take in Vasselheim. The second group comprised of Keyleth, Vax, and Tiberius, plus two guest characters, Thorbeer, a dwarven fighter, played by Will Wheaton, and Kashaw, a human cleric, played by Will Friedle, start this episode in a pit of composting matter deep underneath the Velvet Cabaret, a pleasure hall where they were looking for a Rakshasa for their contract. They have just been noticed by an enormous creature with a toothy maw, and they start by rolling initiative. A bunch of rat swarms emerge from the pile underneath them, and Tiberius recognizes the larger creature as an Otyuk. If I'm mispronouncing that, we're just going to go with it, because I don't know how to spell it and I don't know how to say it. So Otyuk, which is basically garbage disposals come to life. Kashaw goes first and casts Sacred Flame at the Otyuk successfully. Then Tiberius casts Fireball, as well as a Quicken spell to throw 3 scorching rays at it. He incinerates one of the rat swarms in the process, and then the Otyuk moves to attack Tiberius, who takes half damage thanks to the stone skin he cast prior to falling into the pit, as well as Keyleth, and they are both now grappled. Vax, who is still in the tunnel above the pit, finally reaches the edge where it drops off below. The rat swarms try to attack Keyleth, Kashaw, and Tiberius, but miss. Keyleth grabs the tentacle, grappling her, and casts Blight on it successfully. Thorbeer, who is also still in the tunnel above, reaches where Vax now stands. Kashaw casts another Sacred Flame at the Otyuk. Then Tiberius casts True Strike on it, and Misty steps to the other side of the pit to release himself from its grapple. The Otyuk then moves to take a bite attack at Keyleth, earning an opportunity attack from Kashaw. It then attacks Tiberius twice, one successful, one non, and grapples him again. Vax throws his daggers at the Otyuk from the tunnel above, and then the rat swarms attack Tiberius and Keyleth. She takes her turn and casts Blight on the tentacle grappling her again and kills it off. Thorbeer yells down to them from above and asks, or says, my notes get a little chaotic here. He yells down at them and says, "You were supposed to save something for me." He jumps out of the tunnel, lands on one of the rat swarms, then swings his axe a bunch at them and misses all 3 attacks, rolling 2 1s and a 3. One rat climbs up his pant leg and bites him in the crotch, and in pure frustration, he reaches down and tears the rat apart with his hands. He is in severe pain, near prone, and he says, well, because dwarf sticks are sensitive to rat bites, because that's common knowledge. Kashaw turns to Thorbeer and asks, "Are you kidding me?" Then he moves towards Tiberius, who he calls strong castles instead of Stormwind, and casts Sacred Flame on the rat swarm near him. Tiberius casts Obelisk of Stone to raise him up higher, and then does a quicken spell to shoot a firebolt at the same swarm. But he loses his footing in the process on the obelisk, and because it's so slick from the composting matter, and falls. Vax throws some daggers at the rat swarm near Thorbeer, killing it off, and then convinces the other swarms to retreat back into the pile of refuse beneath them. Vax then leaps down into the pit and offers Thorbeer his arm to help him up. Kashaw asks, "How's your dick?" Thorbeer says, "I don't want to talk about it." Tiberius prestidigitates all the shit off of himself, while Kashaw has a quick side conversation with Keyleth about her ruined dress. Vax sees a door in the side of the pit, which he investigates, and he picks the lock to open it, pushing some of the refuse out of the way. He glances into the next room and sees sets of iron bars on either side of a long stone hallway that disappears into darkness. He proceeds into this silent hallway, carefully checking for traps, seeming to find some sort of prison. The air has a chemical smell to it, and they all continue forward. Keyleth looks around in some of the cells, rolling a natural 20, and finds that there's one corpse that doesn't seem to have the same level of dust on it as the others. She calls Vax over, who also rolls a natural 20, and he picks the lock to the cell so that they can inspect it closer. It's only a few months old, which contrasts against the other corpse that are closer to bare skeletons. They discover that he is a Dusk Meadow Bastion, and Kashaw casts Speak with Dead on him. He asks it, "What killed you?" The corpse says something that isn't supposed to be here, something that wasn't what it seemed. It looked like a woman who wasn't supposed to be in the abandoned prison, and she took his throat. He then asks, "When were you killed?" And the corpse says, 14 weeks. He asks, "Do you know which direction she went?" And the corpse says, "She walked away laughing, eating my parts." He apparently also saw some other people come through since then, including a dwarf. Kashaw asks, "Are all the other guards that come through bastions of the Raven Queen too?" And the corpse confirms that it is their duty to protect the Amaranthine oubliette. Lots of words in this one. Kashaw then asks Tiberius, "Stormcloud, any questions?" They confirm that the dwarf was coming to and from the direction they came from, and that's when the spell ends. Thorbeer complains that every second they're there, it's getting away, and Vax reassures him, saying he'll carve it up if Thorbeer keeps him distracted. Thorbeer says he will, and Kashaw warns him not to get his dick bit again. They leave the cell, and Vax continues down the hallway. Tiberius asks Kashaw how close he is to his god, and he replies, "At one time, very close, but now I don't think you'd want to be anywhere near her." Keyleth asks for details, and he tells them that her name is Vesh, and he's the only one on the planet who has heard of her. She apparently killed everyone else. Keyleth asks why he was spared, and he says because he is Vesh's husband. Tiberius asks what it's like being married to a god. "It sounds rather convenient," he says. And Keyleth asks how that happened in the first place, while Thorbeer sighs heavily and follows after Vax. Kashaw says that all these blah, 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 blah. Kashaw says that Vesh married him at birth, since he was born with yellow eyes. They were married at birth, and she killed everyone in the village, and she came to consummate the marriage on his 15th birthday. He made the first 50 slashes on his right arm, and then she made the next 50, and he was given all of her memories. That's when he realized that she was essentially the devil. He was raised as a healer to be her balance in the universe. He tried to kill her when he was 15, and he hasn't seen her since. Tiberius says that probably means that he can't ask for favors, and Kashaw says, yeah, if I do, she might kill you, me, and everyone else around me. At this point, Vax and Thorbeer reach another hallway where they see two figures who are dressed in full Dusk Meadow Bastion armor. Vax pushes the group back into the cell that they were just in as one of the Bastions calls out into the darkness. The guard approaches and glances down the hallway. They all roll a stealth check crammed into the back corner of the prison cell, but luckily the guards do not see them. Keyleth throws up a wall of stone to separate them from the guards as they continue down the hallway, and the group proceeds forward. Keyleth picks up her conversation from before and asks Kashaw if Vesh killed his parents too, and he sarcastically says, yes, thank you for bringing that up. The chemical smell gets stronger as they walk, and they find another door, which Vax unlocks. The lock starts to freeze over, though, as he's fiddling with it, and a face emerges from the door as a ghostly hand reaches out for him. He tries to dodge away, and Matt has the group roll for initiative. Two translucent figures emerge into the hallway around them, and Tiberius goes first by casting True Strike on one of them, then backing away. The ghosts attempt to possess Vax and Keyleth, both successfully, and Thorbeer responds by making a goading attack at Keyleth, but the ghost succeeds on its saving throw. Kashaw then casts Hold Person on Vax unsuccessfully and runs after Tiberius. It earns an opportunity attack from Keyleth, but she rolls a natural 1. Tiberius casts Obelisk of Stone to crush both Vax and Keyleth, causing Keyleth to fall unconscious and forcing the ghost out of her body. He then spends some sorcery points for a quickened spell and casts Scorching Ray at it. The ghost uses Horrifying Visage, causing Kashaw to become frightened. Possessed Vax stealths into a corner to hide and then sneak attacks Tiberius. Keyleth fails a death saving throw, and Thorbeer makes another goading attack against Vax. Kashaw casts Bless on Tiberius, Thorbeer, and himself, successfully breaking the fear with his saving throw. Keyleth succeeds on her next death saving throw, and Tiberius grabs Keyleth to pull her out of the way while the ghost takes a withering touch attack against Thorbeer, but misses. Possessed Vax takes 2 attacks against Thorbeer, but misses 1, and Thorbeer responds by hitting Vax with 1 out of 3 attacks because he rolled so poorly. Kashaw casts Undead Turn Undead, causing both ghosts to flee from them, and Keyleth fails her next death saving throw. Tiberius gives a healing potion to Keyleth, bringing her to consciousness, and Vax uses a healing potion for himself. He then kicks the door open that he unlocked previously and is hit by a strong chemical smell. Tiberius, Kashaw, and Keyleth object, saying that they need to wait before moving forward, while Thorbeer follows Vax into the revealed hallway. Vax takes another healing potion. Keyleth asks for some healing from Kashaw, and Tiberius says he will move no further until he can take a proper rest. Vax and Thorbeer find a partially destroyed room and some sort of liquid that has dissolved a large pit into the floor of the hallway in front of them. Vax grabs Thorbeer and they close the door, returning to the rest of the group. He notifies them that the hallway is full of acid, and they decide to take a rest before proceeding, while Keyleth prepares a hero's feast. Keyleth asks Tiberius to use his mage hand to make the forks on the table dance while she sings Be Our Guest from the non-canonical Beauty and the Beast. And Kashaw asks, is this a thing? Is this happening right now? Keyleth says that people pay a lot of money for this type of experience and entertainment, and Vax tells him to just sit down and eat the food. Kashaw says shouldn't have healed her. They take a short rest while they eat, becoming immune to poison and being frightened, as well as gaining some hit points. Tiberius/Orion argues for a full long rest to reset his sorcery points, and Keyleth/Marisha tells him that they told him not to spend all his points because they don't have time for a full rest. Vax and Thorbeer say they have to keep going because the Rakshasa is going to get away, and Kashaw asks Thorbeer to make the decision as the leader, who says that they proceed forward without resting. Keyleth asks Kashaw for some healing, and Vax tosses his last healing potion to her. Tiberius complains some more about needing a long rest, but they continue on. Vax checks the other door in the hallway that he didn't unlock yet and opens it to find a large pile of collapsed rubble. Thorbeer says that he once knew someone who met a bad fate in acid and that he would prefer to check out the third door in the hallway before choosing the route with the pool of acid. Thorbeer checks out the third door, but Vax offers to look at it before they open it, finding a spiral staircase that leads upward. Keyleth casts Locate Creature on the Rakshasa and finds a presence down the acid hallway, so that's where they head. Keyleth says they should use the flying carpet, so they pull it out, and that's where they break for the episode. So, what do we think of this first half?
There was a lot of little things that built
many.
up to, a full 2 hours and change of
Oh,
content.
yeah.
I think this section in particular is most interesting in its contrast to our first set of people. I think that there's a lot to think about, and I have lots of thoughts, but I'm gonna try to keep it somewhat contained because I think I could go for a while.
There's a lot in these episodes. There's a lot.
There is, and I love them, and they're complicated, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that stuck out to me this time was the difference in pacing between the two quests. So the other one, they have the full 3 days. This one, they are chasing something rather than going somewhere. So they're stuck with an accelerated timeline. So the pacing feels very similar in that they have time constraints that are pushing them to move quickly, but with very different results. And one of the outcomes of that is that we learn very little about Torvier and Kashaw. We have time to learn Zara's backstory and to learn a little bit about Lyra and to get to know them as people and to get to see them as more than just their introductions. Kashaw and Torvier don't really have a chance to move past their original edgelord introduction because they never have time to rest. They never have time to talk because of the way that their pace is moving. And we'll come back to Kashaw later and get to know him. We never get to know Torvier beyond this quest. And I think the impact of that and on the characters themselves and what that actually means for their story is a lot bigger than people give it credit for.
There is so much packed into these episodes, and you're right, like this group in particular didn't get a chance to do, for lack of a better term, team building exercises.
Right.
Like they didn't have those chats and those bonding moments that Zara and Vex had over at the campfire while they were doing watches overnight, and they didn't have chance for the whole like Lyra and Scanlan dynamic to really mature. Like we are seeing very interesting relationship dynamics within this second group as well, and we've talked about that a little bit in previous episodes, but you're right, they don't have time to really get into nuance. It's just like the broad strokes of like, yeah, Vesh is my god, she killed everyone but me, apparently I'm her husband, and then we just move on.
Right. And like we know that Torvier has a daughter or some young girl that is in his life, but the players don't. Like there is nothing that he does that would tell them that. Like that is the only bit of backstory we know about him. We know nothing else. If we're comparing apples to apples, we've got Lyra who's only in Trial of the Take, and we've got Torvier who's only in Trial of the Take. We know miles more about Lyra.
Yeah.
Because they had that downtime to share about themselves and to tell their story that we don't get here.
And I think so much of the interactions that happen in the second group are focused around these, I don't know if I want to call them bigger interpersonal conflicts than the first group, but like, because there was tension between Zara and Vex starting out, but they had the chance to get over that tension. Whereas I think with this lack of character development, the tension that happens with Tiberius's character and the tension that happens with Kashaw's character and even Keyleth's character in this, like there's no time for resolution with the conflict. And so we spend
Yeah.
so much of our time and energy and focus on the conflict with this second group.
Yeah, there is no space in these episodes for anybody to move past their initial introductions to each other, which means that Keyleth stays that bubbly, upbeat, mostly annoying, person, and the
Mhm.
only lift in this episode, and everybody else stays a bit of a grumpy edgelord, which is a choice.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of
but I
grumpiness.
I think that that only happens because it is so compact.
Mm.
I think if they had had a chance to actually build any kind of relationship with each other instead of diving into a dungeon
Mhm.
immediately, we would have gotten a very different episode. But we also would have seen a lot more about who these characters are between the fact that they don't want to be on this quest.
There's no release valve, like
Yeah.
typically in storytelling, you have those release valves of like comedy and lightheartedness and side adventures that happen
Mm-hmm.
that are tangential to the main quest or whatever that's going on. And we don't have the chance for that here.
Yeah. And Keela's trying to do some of that. I think Marisha is trying to do some of that. It doesn't mesh with how everybody else is working at this table at the moment. So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't work. You need
Mm-hmm.
people to be receptive to it or to have the chance to respond to it in order for that to have the desired effect.
Mm-hmm.
So it just doesn't turn out well for anybody involved.
Yeah, I mean, that made me think of the fact that Thorbeer actually does provide some comedic relief
Mm-hmm.
of this. Like in the previous episode, it was more like him getting his axe stuck in the wall and struggling with
Right.
that and all of his bad rolling that we've been seeing along the way. And, his whole thing with the rat swarm and biting his dick and all of that. Like that provides comedic relief. But Thorbeer reacts grumpily to the comedic relief in that
Mm-hmm.
form. And I think it's hard to differentiate the tone of it. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like Thorbeer's grumpiness is more lighthearted than the other people's grumpiness,
Yeah.
but we don't necessarily have that time and space to recognize that differentiation between the two.
Yeah, and I think we can kind of see it better if we look at how the cast responds as opposed
Mm,
to the characters.
mm,
Because the cast are breaking down, laughing, they're having
mm,
so much fun at this table.
mm.
And it's so important for us to like look at this and not take these, grumpy characters as indications that the story is going badly or that the players are having trouble with it.
Yeah.
It's that their characters are in a tough spot, but that doesn't make it any less fun for the people at the table. They are very clearly enjoying Torbier and his grumpy attitude, and they're enjoying Cash and his, acerbic way of coming at things, and they are enjoying the situation.
Mhm.
It just is a little hard to watch because we're looking mainly at the story.
Yeah, it is hard to watch, and it's too much too. Like it's just there's not enough variation among
Mm-hmm.
it for us to be able to have that breath of fresh air that comes from the lightheartedness or the breaks that we get. Like they
Yeah.
are laughing, they are enjoying, but there's just too many grumpy characters.
I think they could have gotten away with it without Tiberius, honestly. But not, I'm not going to make this into another Tiberius
Yeah,
complaining episode.
yeah, yeah.
But I think you can get away with Kashaw and Torbier playing off each other in different ways of being a little off kilter. It's the fact that Vax and Tiberius are very clearly in a bad mood that's dragging it down more than I think these two characters are.
Yeah.
I think it's more on our main characters
Mm.
that this mood is a problem.
Mm.
than it is on our guests. But I
Mm.
don't know if that's just because I actually like both of our guests or if it's something that I'm truly seeing in this show.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll never know, honestly, like what the dynamic would change, how the dynamic would change if we switched around the characters a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can only go off of what actually happened. And based on what's happening, I'm not a fan of Kashaw in this because he very much strikes me as that stereotypical, like almost bordering on negging. Do you know the term negging?
Yeah.
Like it's too close to that for me to, because like he vacillates between this, like especially near the end of this first half of like coming on to Keyleth, but in a very like deprecatory, depreciate,
Depreciating.
yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. I see it and I totally get that view. I've seen it a lot. I understand it. But I think that his sense of humor and mine match in a way where I don't take it in that way in a lot of times.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of why I like these episodes more than other people, is because to me, a lot of what Cashaw says doesn't come off in the same way.
Mm.
Because I think it matches a little better with my own personal humor.
Mm.
Um, and that in itself is a lesson of being careful of how I come across to other
Mm.
people, but also in maybe not taking things in bad faith. um,
Mm.
and it goes in all directions, and there's a lot to be said for it.
Mm.
But that being said, your point is completely valid and I
Yeah.
completely understand it.
I mean, like, I have historically been a big fan of Kashaw, and I think it's just this minute analysis that we're doing now, where I'm like literally writing down every line that they're saying. Like,
Yeah.
it just has become cringeworthy for me. And I think it goes back to the earlier point that we were making, is like, I don't think it would be as cringeworthy if we didn't have so much grumpiness just overloading
Mm,
the group in general.
fair
Like,
enough.
because I also see your point in the sense of like Kashaw and Thorbeer aren't really taking this as seriously as the main characters are in
Hmm.
this moment. And I think Keyleth, for her own sake, is making this effort to bring lightheartedness to the situation and to bring some type of like balance to this gross amount of grumpiness that we have going on here.
Yeah.
But Tiberius does bring the whole mood even further down near the end of the second half.
Yeah. I had trouble with that part.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wonder if partially the balance is thrown off because at this point in the campaign, Vax is a comedic character. He
Yeah,
hasn't hit, the dark and brooding stage yet.
his emo stage.
And the only reason that he is grumpy is because he's separated from Vex. If he's with her, he is pulling pranks and being funny and having fun with it. And it's such a major switch at this point. I kind of wonder if that was part of the balance that didn't work out the way it was intended to.
Totally, totally. I mean, do we want to point or touch on Tiberius at all? At Ryan. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory with the summary and like what actually happens in the episode. Like, this is just one of the really bad ones.
It's getting really bad, and I'm glad
Yeah.
we're down to what, 5 more episodes with him.
Yeah, we're starting the countdown. I think
Yeah.
after this set of Trial of the Take episodes, I think I'm going to start an official countdown.
I mean, that's very, very appropriate at this point. Uh, I think one, this is one of his most blatant episodes where he cheats like crazy.
Yeah,
Like you can watch him turning dice
yeah.
because he has a guest sitting next to him instead of one of the players who's been keeping an eye on him.
Yeah.
And I looked up this episode on one of the wikis, and in the comments section, somebody had done the math of how many spells and sorcery points he was supposed to have versus how many he used, and it is horrible this episode.
I started keeping track, and on my math, he did 8 sorcery points just in this first half. And I
Yeah.
don't know how many he has total at this level, but I try to keep track.
Yeah, I don't know enough about sorcerers to really like judge,
Yeah.
but it's just it's rough. And like his first turn took 9.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Nobody's turn should take 9.5 minutes.
Yeah. Keyleth even said that she knit a sweater during his turn.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. Anyway, I am at this point trying to ignore him as much as possible and just count down until he's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think the most interesting dynamic that I'm getting out of these episodes is the Kashaw Keyleth dynamic. Because it feels like oil and water to me. And it feels fascinating because of that.
I think Keyleth has this ability to attract people who are her polar opposite and make friends with them anyway.
Yeah.
She does it a couple times.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I just find it hilarious how that develops over time. And something that has been sticking with me since the conversation with Petal is like Keyleth, I think, also tries to make herself present more masculine in this group because she is surrounded by, I don't know if I want to call it toxic masculinity, but definitely masculine.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's hard not to fall into that. Especially like I worked in STEM for many years, which is very much a male dominated field, you know, only women in my class more than once. And the instinct is to put that away and be more masculine and try to be the most cohesive with the group. And I kind of think that's part of what Keela's dealing with here, um, is being the only woman. It is hard to hold on to femininity, and to not feel like that's holding you back.
Yeah, and I think that's also a trait of Marisha as
Oh
well,
yeah. Yes.
coming through with Keela in this
It
episode.
absolutely is. And I think it's exasperated by the fact that right now she's the only woman on set.
Yeah, yeah. I think Laura popped in prior to the official start of the stream, but
Yeah.
beyond that, yeah. I mean, who knows what happens behind the camera?
Yeah. I mean, we know that Laura and Travis are watching.
Yeah, yeah,
Other than that, who knows?
yeah. Well, you mentioned personal experiences a little bit. Are there any other experiences that are coming up for you?
You know, it relates to a lot of things, mostly going back to my time in STEM. You know, it has a lot of commonalities just because of, you know, the gender politics that are happening and the force of personality that exists. But the thing that came to mind first was those group projects where nobody wants to be in charge, so nothing gets done the way that anybody wants it to. So nobody's happy.
Yeah.
Like it's made infinitely worse by the fact that nobody wants to make decisions because then everybody is upset by it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a blame game going on. Very
Yeah.
clearly, there's a blame game going on, and everyone's pointing fingers at everyone else. And that I feel is like a deflection,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Like,
Yeah.
don't look at me. I'm not the wrong one here.
Like Torbjorn's in charge on paper, but really any of them could have stepped up and made the decision and everybody would have been happier just by virtue of not having to stall and have a conversation about it. And none of them want to take that role. And I have been in so many group projects where that is the case for so long. that the
Mhm.
project just barely gets done if it gets done at all.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of personal experiences that I haven't talked about so far on this series because it does have to revolve around like mansplaining for me. Like when you said the whole STEM thing, I remember sitting through this awful dinner once. I dated a tech bro for a couple of years, and we
That'll do.
all went out to dinner one night with all of his coworkers. And so I was like
Mm.
sandwiched between tech bros throughout this entire dinner. And I was a leadership coach at the time in my business. And I was, they always ask me what I do and yada, yada, yada. And this guy goes like, oh, well, have you read this book? He named one of the books that I love. Like it's one of my favorite books that I recommend to everyone when it comes to leadership practices. And I was like, oh yeah, that's one of my favorites. And then he proceeded to explain the entire book to me.
Come on.
I was there just like, I want to leave. I just want to like just get up and go.
Yeah.
Like instantly, I no longer wanted to have anything to do with. It's just like this is not a conversation I want to have. I never want to see your face again.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I literally said it's one of my favorite books, and then he goes on, explains the whole thing.
Yeah. I had so many of those kinds of experiences in college that I couldn't pick one. It was very prevalent.
Yeah.
It's not something I miss about being in that world.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it actually helped me understand my partner more at the time. I was like, oh, this is how you spend your entire days in conversations like these. And I was like, no wonder you come home and act like an asshole.
Yeah, you tend to pick up the people you're hanging around.
Yeah, yeah. Because he had a tendency to always like want to insert his rightness, and I think we're seeing
Mm.
that
Mm-mm.
too in this episode of like wanting to assert their lack of wrongness, not even their rightness, even, but their lack of blame is something that they're trying to assert
Yeah,
time and time again.
they just want to prove that they're not the bottom rung.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of like other personal experiences that apply to this, but I think you're right in the terms of like the group projects things and like no one wanting to take a lead. And this is where democracy kind of falls.
Yeah, it works as long as somebody actually wants to be in charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what are we being called to do as a result?
I think the biggest thing for me was to try to see past first impressions.
Mm,
It's so easy to just take that first glimpse of somebody and take that as everything and make decisions and make choices based off of that first impression. Uh, but I think seeing how unfinished the stories were from those
mm,
first impressions and getting to see glimpses of what was lying behind them, it was just a really timely reminder of the need to go beyond that and to take
totally.
a moment and actually learn about the people that
Mm,
I'm interacting with and not to not to leave it behind just because the first impression didn't go incredibly well.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm gonna have to agree with you on that one. Like, for me, I think it's more focused on not taking words at face value.
Mm,
Because
that
that's
too.
definitely what I'm doing right now with Kashaw is taking words at face value. And I don't necessarily think that that's fair in this situation. Like, as we've talked about through this episode, like, there are so many different motivations and influences impacting their behavior in this particular situation.
Hmm.
Like the time pressure automatically ups it, right? The
Right.
group grumpy dynamics automatically ups it. The split from the normal group automatically ups it. The gender tension automatically ups it. Like there's so many tension increasers at play here that it might not be fair of me to take everything at face value.
Yeah, and I think the way we're looking at this and that we're digging into it so deep, it can be easy to forget
Mm-hmm.
that, some of these things are part of a bigger picture because we're looking at it so minutely. Um, we've got how many hours of content for this show? And we're looking at it, an hour or 2 hours at a time,
Mm-hmm.
one line at a time
Mm-hmm.
in a show that, people forget entire arcs of because
Yeah.
there's just so much.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that also underlines the importance of how much words and influences impact us personally too,
Hmm.
to recognize that for ourselves as well. And
Yeah.
like when we are in grumpy moods, being like, I am a grumpy mood. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, please.
Yeah. I occasionally will just straight up tell my coworkers, like, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Ask me in an hour when I am not in this mood.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's fewer misunderstandings. It
Mm-hmm.
solves problems before they happen.
Mm-hmm.
And my coworkers have gotten used to the fact that sometimes I am not a morning person and you should not talk to me yet. I
Yeah,
will not give you a good answer.
yeah, yeah. And respect the pause too.
Hmm.
Like, even though they are like they had an entire hour eating that hero's feast.
Yeah.
And so they could have taken that entire hour to have these conversations, to create nuance, to
Right.
have this being like, all right, let's regroup, take a breath, figure out how we want to function as a group in general. But they didn't even use that opportunity for that. They used the opportunity to complain.
Well, you also at some point need to be in the headspace for it,
Mm-hmm.
or at least have enough self-awareness to realize that it's a problem, and they haven't had enough time to get there either.
Yeah.
I think if they had had a chance to kind of evaluate separately rather than all being stuck in the same room together, in the same mood, in the same place, there's no breath for them, there's no privacy, there's no chance for reflection. And
Mm-hmm.
and that hour could have been used better, but I don't think they had the chance to get to a point where they could do that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was just counting in my head to see how many encounters they had in both groups, too. Like, both groups have
Mm.
3 fights in these 2 episodes that they're given. It's
Yeah.
just bizarre to me that the other group was able to fit so much bonding time into it around the 3 fights that they had. But I think the other group was also more apt to think of alternative solutions beyond fighting.
Yeah, and that's definitely part of it. I also think that their travel was more drawn out and less harrowing. So
Mm,
like it was dangerous, but it wasn't there's a trap every 5 feet.
mm,
It was we're on a horse and we need to keep an eye out, but we can still have a conversation.
mm,
Whereas this group is more of like, we can't talk because we're going to alert a guard, or we're going to
mm,
set off a trap, or we're
mm,
going to, lose track for 3 seconds and somebody's going to end up dead.
mm,
I think there's a level of, they were equally harrowing in very different ways and at very different time scales.
mm.
And that plays into what they're able to accomplish outside of those encounters, even if there is the same number of them.
Yeah. I want to know what Matt learned from all of this.
I think he learned a lot just because we're looking at kind of a similar situation in campaign 3 where, we've got 2 split groups and he's playing it very differently.
Mm-hmm. He is. He's very playing it very differently, and it's an amazing parallel to what we're seeing in campaign 3 right now, which
Yeah.
the podcast has nothing to do with, but there are some very fascinating parallels.
Yeah, not bringing up specifics because we're not
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it is definitely interesting to see what has changed in the last 7 years
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, 7. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was 2016 back then, and it is currently 2023.
Math, dates, I don't know. It's all hard.
Well, I was also saying that for our audience. In case you find this video 5 years from now.
You know, yeah.
This is a little time capsule for you all.
It's probably a good choice. That's why you're the host.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I'm gonna stop there because all I have left are very large rants. So
yeah, a lot of my notes are about Orion, and I'm just going to ignore them.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna pretend he doesn't exist, and I will be much happier for it.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is powerful stuff we're talking about. Per usual, an audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own insights, stories, and feelings with us as well. We'd love to know how Critical Role has impacted you in your own lives. Special thanks to Atlas for joining me on this episode. It's been a pleasure.
Always fun to be here.
And yeah, so next time we'll be discussing Campaign 1, Episode 21, Part 2. And joining me will be Atlas again, so I'm excited for that. And as always, I'm looking for more co-hosts and guests. So if you're interested in coming on the series, just hit me up. I'll send you the sign-up link. Easy peasy. In the meantime, please comment, like, subscribe below. Follow us on Tumblr at Sacred Reading CR. And until next time, may all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free. And always, always, always remember to love each other. Take care, guys.
See you later.